Ever want to change a pesky background that's ruining your photo? Swapping backgrounds with Photoshop, today on DesignLab. My name is Daniel, and welcome to DesignLab. DesignLab is all about using different tools to help you achieve your creative vision. Whether you're a Creative Cloud Pro or a digital design beginner, I'm going to help you develop the skills you need to be a DesignLab expert. Have you ever taken a photo and loved the way you looked, but not the background? I certainly have. Well, worry no more, because today we're going to be using Photoshop to remove subjects from photos and put them onto different backgrounds. The techniques I'm going to show you work for professional level designs, but also for your social media pages, or maybe even a blog post. I'm going to be demonstrating these Photoshop techniques step by step. I'd recommend you watch with Photoshop open and complete the steps as I do. You may want to pause the video so you can keep up with the demonstration. Okay, so let's get to work on some backgrounds in Photoshop. Before jumping in, just a quick reminder to like and subscribe. The Tech Learning Network comes out with new videos each week about design, coding, and digital productivity. Every video demonstrates a new skill that makes you more ready to work in the digital world. Okay, so we're going to start off by launching Photoshop on our computers. Once we have Photoshop open, we're going to want to create a new file. But follow along with me because we're going to want specific settings for this file. So we're going to go ahead and select New File in the top left. Once we have that selected, you'll see it gives us a ton of different file formats. For now, we're just going to ignore this and select Custom and go over to the width and height. We're going to want your width and height to be the same number, as this is for a mock social media post. So you can just set it to something like 1080 by 1080, just like I have. You'll notice for resolution, it's at 300 pixels per inch. While this is good for printing, we're using it for a social media post, so we're going to want to change that to something a little bit smaller. So we're going to go ahead, select resolution, and let's just change it to 72. 72 is actually a good starting ground for most social media posts, as most social media platforms will compress them to 72 ppi regardless. So once we have that open, we'll notice that now we have a canvas, but we don't have a subject or a background in our canvas. So now we're going to start importing our photos. We're going to go up to the top left, select File, Open, and I'm just going to go and select my subject. So you'll notice we have our subject selected, but the canvas is sort of a rectangle now. You'll also notice in the top left that it opened a new tab. We still have our canvas, but now we have another tab with our subject in it. To fix this, we're just going to go over to the right where it says Layers. Make sure we have our Layer 0 selected, and we can just drag and drop right onto our canvas. We're going to notice a few things here. First thing is that our image is the wrong size. Second thing is we still have this pesky little background tab over here. First, we're going to begin by resizing our image. In the top left, you're going to want to make sure Show Transform Controls is selected. Once it's selected, you'll notice it gives us the ability to resize our image. So we're just going to hold that and drag it to the left. Then I'm going to drag this over, line it up with the edge, and I can just keep dragging this until it snaps into the canvas. Now I'm just going to move it so our subject is in frame. And when I'm done with that, I can just press Enter. So now we have our subject image resized and in the middle of the frame. We're going to go ahead and unlock this background tab, which is going to allow us to edit it, and just press Backspace since we're not going to be using that. While I'm here, I'm also going to rename our layer to Subject. That way in the future, if I have multiple layers, it'll be easier to organize. Now we have our subject and our canvas in the correct sizes, so we're going to want to start selecting our subject out of its current background. To begin this, we're going to go to the top left, to the Select tab, and just select Subject. Let it load for a second. So you'll notice that it automatically selected the subject of our photo. Select Subject is a newer feature on Photoshop that uses Adobe's machine learning technology, otherwise known as Adobe Sensei, to automatically select and mask your photo. Perfect for this project. So once it's selected, we're going to go back into Select, and then go all the way down to Select and Mask. This is going to allow us to see what Select Subject actually selected. We can use this tool to refine edges and select parts that maybe weren't included. So you'll notice here I can't even see the background that was previously there, but I still want to see it a little bit for reference. I'm going to go over to Transparency on the right, and let's just drag it to around 50. That way I could see the background, but I could also see the selected part. I'm going to begin by fixing this part on her left arm. I'm going to take the zoom tool, click once, and click twice. You'll notice there's a little bit of a gap here. So I'm going to go into the top left and select my brush tool. I'm going to make it a good size. You could also change the size by right-clicking and just adjusting the slider here. And then I'm just going to drag all over the part that wasn't selected. You'll notice that this is filling it in. So now when I go to my zoom tool, I can right-click, press fit on screen, and you'll notice that it's corrected over here. So now I'm going to take a look at the edges and just see what might be a mistake. If I zoom in on our eyeglasses, you'll notice that there's a little bit of an issue with the transparency. To fix this, I'm going to go back to the brush tool on the left, and then I'm going to resize it so it's about the same size as the lens frame. Once I have a good size, I'm just going to trace out the lens frame until I think it looks good. So that's a pretty good place to start. So now I'm going to go back to zoom, fit on screen, and we can see our entire subject now. If needed, I could also use the global refinement settings on the right. Smooth is just going to smooth out jagged edges, so you'll see when I turn that up. It's going to smooth out some of the edges, but it's also blurring them quite a bit, so I don't want any of that. Turn that back down. Feathering tool is going to do a similar sort of effect, but it's more so blurring them and making the transparency higher on the edges. So you'll notice when I turn feathering all the way up, our subject seems to fade into the background, which is not what we want. Contrast, on the other hand, could be quite useful for us. If you turn contrast up, you'll notice it increases the contrast of the edges. Quite a bit, actually. This will be helpful when putting our subject on a different background. That way we can get it to match the background more efficiently and blend and look more natural. So I'm pretty comfortable with how this looks, but I'm going to double check it. I'm going to go into View and go to Black and White. With black and white, I can just see the general edges of our entire photo without a sort of three-dimensional value. This is good for telling if there's any little parts that are sticking out that I might not have noticed when it was in color. Similar with marching ants, or marquee, you can see the outline of our subject. And I'm noticing right here, there's a little edge right there. So I'm just going to take my brush tool again and go right over that. Problem solved. So now I think we're at a pretty good place to start importing our subject onto a different background. So I'm going to go ahead into the bottom right and press OK. You'll notice after all that selection, our subject is still on its original background. This is an easy fix. We're just going to go ahead, go to Edit, Cut, and then Edit again, and Paste. Now you'll notice that there's two layers in the bottom right, one which contained our original subject photo, and the new one which contains just our subject. So we can go ahead and delete that one. I'm going to rename this again to Subject, and press Enter. Now I'm just going to adjust it so it's symmetrical with the canvas. You'll notice that it's able to snap right into the middle. So if I take my zoom tool and zoom out, after we zoom out, we'll notice that our subject is right in the middle of the frame and also symmetrical with both the edges. So now we're going to begin importing our background. The same way we imported our subject, we're going to go File, Open. I'm going to select the image I want as my background photo and just double click that. You'll notice it does the same exact thing it did with our subject photo, so we can just unlock that so we can edit it, and then drag and drop onto our frame. So once again, we're going to have a sizing issue, but we know how to fix it now. We're going to go to the Move tool in the top left, make sure Show Transform Controls is selected. You'll notice here I can't quite see the edges yet, so I'm just going to drag until I can see them on my screen. Right there. And I'm going to resize it so it fits the canvas. Once I have it at a pretty good size, I'm just going to lock it into place. Done. So you'll notice we have our background now, but where did our subject go? Let's fix that. We can do that by selecting our layer with the background photo and just dragging it below the subject. So now we're going to have our subject in front of our background. And just for the sake of organization, I'm going to rename this to Background. You may be looking at this and thinking, that looks fine how it is, but we're going to go the extra step and make them blend together to appear more natural. We're going to use a method of non-destructive editing. That way we're not directly editing our background photo in case we want to change anything later. Once we have our background selected, we're going to put an adjustment layer on it. We're going to start off with color balance. Color balance is going to allow us to edit the shadows, midtones, and highlights of our photo, also tinting the colors differently. I'm going to begin by linking this to the background layer. That way, it doesn't affect the subject layer at all. So let's start off with shadows. Our main goal here is to make it match the subject. So for shadows, I'm going to go with around 27 over here. I don't really need any green or magenta tones, so I'm going to keep that the way it is. And then we're going to want to make it a little bit of a darker blue. So then we're going to go to midtones. And same idea, this is going to affect the midtones, the parts of the image that aren't quite bright but aren't quite dark. I want to darken that sign a little bit, so I'm going to add a little bit of red. I don't need magenta or green once again. I'm just going to put that over here until I find a nice middle ground. Highlights. So highlights is going to be the part we want to focus on. As you'll notice, the sign is probably the brightest part of our background layer. So this is going to be where we're going to start to see a lot of change. I don't want as much cyan, so I'm just going to adjust that. Now I'm going to add a little bit of green. And then we're going to want it to be a nice deep blue, so let's go all the way up with this. You'll notice now we have sort of a deep cyan or light blue color. It's not quite there, but it's getting closer to what we want our final product to look like. Just to compare, let's go down to our color balance layer that we added. Press this little eyeball, which is going to allow us to view it, and you'll notice it turns off. Now if we tap it again, it'll turn back on. You can see the difference between the cyan and the light blue that we have now. But it's not quite where we want it. So let's go back to selecting our background layer. This time we're going to adjust the hue/saturation. As I said before, we want more of a deep blue for the background. So I'm going to find a nice middle ground here where it's nice and blue, but not too blue, because you'll notice if I go over here, too dark. So let's go somewhere around here. And then for saturation, I'm just going to leave it as it is. For lightness, I'm going to want to make it a little bit lighter. So once again, if we go down to our hue/saturation tab, you notice it makes a little bit of an adjustment, but we're getting closer to our goal. So now I'm going to want to go back to the background again, and we're going to add our last adjustment layer. This one's going to be selective color. Selective color is going to allow us to select an exact tone and edit that tone only. So you'll see we have blue selected. It might start off as reds for you, but we're going to go to cyans and blues because that's what we're focusing on. And for the blues, I don't want to adjust the cyan, magenta, or yellow, but I do want to make it a little bit darker. So for blue, I'm just going to drag it all the way to 100. So it's a little bit darker. And then I want to go edit the cyans. For cyan, I only want it a little bit darker. It's already close to what we want. And I think that looks fine for what it is. Now you'll notice that the background blue is blending a little bit better with our subject, but we're not quite there yet. Now we're going to want to adjust our subject a tiny bit just to get it to look more natural. So just like we did with our background, we're going to go select our subject layer. And this one's going to need a little bit less work. So I'm going to go to Adjustment Layers and select Brightness/Contrast. You'll notice now if I adjust my brightness, it's adjusting the brightness of the entire image, which is not what I want. To fix this, we're going to link the brightness and contrast layer to the subject. Just as we did with the background, I'm going to go ahead and press this. And you'll notice now when I adjust the brightness, it's only on the subject. So for the brightness, I think I want the brightness a tiny bit higher, just so it can match the brightness of the background. Something like that. The contrast I'm going to want to lower, because you'll notice some of the highlights in her face are a little too bright. So we're going to go a little bit lower. Maybe around there. So let's deselect this and take a look at our image now. Go to Zoom, fit on screen so we can see the entire image. Okay, this looks pretty good, but let's see what it looked like before and after so we can really see the comparison. I'm going to go over to the right and just deselect some of these. So this is what we had originally. As we slowly add each adjustment layer, you'll notice subtle differences that all in all make our image look much better. So looking over this, I can see that now we have a completed, professional, balanced image. Something that I could take out of Photoshop and put straight onto my social media page without an issue. I hope you enjoyed working through these examples as we separated subjects from backgrounds in Photoshop. Once you get good at doing this, you'll unlock a whole bunch of new creative possibilities. I'm Daniel for the Tech Learning Network. We'll see you soon for another episode of Design Lab. Bye!